So here at Video Homicide, we take Halloween very seriously. And when it comes to the fucking horror movies, there's no exception, all right? We leave no stone unturned. But in our ever fucking lasting journey of finding and watching all these horror movies, we become comfortable with certain movies and we reach for them at certain times of the year. And Halloween is like the time of the year for horror fiends. And over the last, I would say, well, the last 2 times I've been to the laundromat, I've compiled this list and here in this notebook. So I've got a bunch of different categories to talk about, and we're gonna basically go through my go-to Halloween horror films. Some of these I may or may not watch this year, but these are definitely ones that I have, checked out over time. And we're gonna start off with the franchise movies, okay? Because I think when you think of horror films, at least for a long time, when I thought about horror films, I thought about Freddy Krueger, I thought about Frankenstein, those kind of guys. So we're going to start it off with the franchises, and I'm just going to run through the movies within the franchise that I like, because you'll understand once we get going here. So we're going to start it off with A Nightmare on Elm Street, okay? So A Nightmare on Elm Street is directed by Wes Craven, and it stars Robert Englund as this dream stalker demon, and basically in his real life, he was like a child predator. He was murdered by the parents of the neighborhood, and he came back to haunt everyone. And you learn more and more about his backstory throughout the series of the films, but the first movie, I think, is unarguably the most terrifying of the series. There's lots of memorable scenes that I can think of, the blonde-haired girl standing in the hallway with, in the body bag with all kinds of shit dripping out. That was the stuff that freaked me out. I still, to this day, think that is one of the scariest movies that I watched when I was a kid. Freddy Krueger is just such a memorable character. Freddy, if you say Freddy, people know who you're talking about. Anyone my age and my brother's age, we know, it's a different type of thing. I feel bad for horror kids or for kids now, because they don't have these characters you can latch onto. Can you latch onto the Nun? The Nun's not delivering one-liners, and I mean, I'm not all about the one-liners with the Freddy Krueger type films, but I enjoy those ones. The movies of the Freddy Krueger franchise that I least enjoy, I enjoy those more than I enjoy most modern horror, if that makes sense. But Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 is amazing. There's so many good kills in this movie. Johnny Depp gets fucking totally blendered, that's the only way I can describe it. He gets fucking blendered in his bed. There's an amazing scene where a kid gets hung in a fucking prison cell. It's very creepy shit. And for some reason, that prison cell has got to be the fucking scariest looking prison cell in a movie. I just think it's so fucking just dreary and not a place that you want to be, kids. And even into its sequel, which is the next film we're going to talk about, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, I believe it's called. And this time, I got to start off right off the bat. I love this movie. That's why it's included in this list. I think it's very scary. So basically, we have a new teenager who moves into the former home of Nancy, who was of the first film, and he discovers her journal, and he starts reading all this stuff, and Freddy Krueger's slowly creeping into his subconscious, but he's also revealing himself in physical form and basically convinces Jesse, who's the main character, that Freddy has the brains and Jesse has the body. And it's insane because the whole movie is basically Jesse committing Freddy's crimes for him. It's kind of, in a way, reminds me of Freddy vs. Jason, where Freddy's getting Jason to do the bidding for him. You got a lot of this kind of banter between our main character Jesse with this other guy named Brady, who's kind of fucks with Jesse a little bit, but they're buddies in a way. It's a weird relationship, but they have such a kind of, it's short-lived, but they have a cool chemistry, which I enjoy. But Brady gets murdered by Jesse posing as Freddy, or Freddy posing as Jesse, and it's a devastating scene. This movie's very bloody, I would say. So moving on to Part 3, Dream Warriors, which a lot of people think, or a lot of people would argue that this is the best Freddy Krueger film. And with me personally, it goes in order, man. The first one's my favorite, second one follows, third one follows that. So this movie, we get the return of Nancy in the form of a psychiatrist, or a woman that works with mental health people, or people that are suffering from mental health issues. And she comes to this hospital, and she quickly realizes that all these kids are having experience with Freddy Krueger. And our new final girl in this film is this girl named Kristen, I believe her name was. And she along with the other patients in the hospital, basically find out that they have these powers. Like they have power in their dreams as well. It's not just Freddy, hence Dream Warriors. And you get some really cool characters mixed in throughout there, and a lot of good scenes, a lot of good kills. Of course, the head going through the TV. It's a very memorable scene. Of course, the one kid that gets his wrist slit and he's treated like a marionette, walked to the hospital, and finally something bad happens to him. This is also the first movie that introduces more of the backstory behind Freddy. So we find out about like his mother and what happened to his mother and all these very vicious things, you know. So Dream Warriors is definitely talked about a lot for a reason. So I would check out the first three. People hold the later installments in the franchise in high regards, but you know, all the power to them. I can't get into them. So we're gonna move on to the next franchise in the series, which is arguably the scariest. I know I'm probably gonna say scary a lot in this video, but we're gonna move on to Halloween. Okay, John Carpenter's Halloween is a film that came out in 1978, and it was I've heard it's been called an accidental masterpiece, where it was made for like 300 grand and went on to to be the highest grossing independent film for like fucking decades. Deservingly so, because this movie is heavy duty. I put it kind of on the same pedestal as like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's gore, like there's violence in the film, but I find like there's not as much violence as I once remembered, because when I was a kid, these movies, the scariness of them was amplified because it was so surreal and so messed up. And you know, the first times you're seeing these movies, you're hearing that music, you're seeing these shots of like Michael Myers wearing this mask, standing in a backyard, looking up into a window, and that is the stuff that Nightmares is made of, man. Like, very creepy stuff. Michael Myers, of course, is like this deranged lunatic. This is like day one stuff for horror people, but you know, it's a great film, and it's talked about as much as it is for a reason, because it laid the groundwork for a lot of slasher films that were to follow, and great stuff by John Carpenter. And then the follow-up film, Halloween 2, is going to be the only other film I mentioned in the franchise, per se, you know, in a way, but basically it starts off right where the first one left off, you know, with our main girl, totally blanking on her name right now, but our main girl, Laurie. So Laurie is in the hospital after the events of the first movie, and Michael Myers is following, and he's after her, and there is some heavy duty shit in this movie. I almost forgot to point out some of the kills in the first one. So there's a scene, like the scene in Halloween to me is when that guy with the glasses gets stabbed in the fucking chest and stuck against the wall. That is horrifying. And then, you know, what happens after that is even creepier, with Michael wearing the fucking, you know, the ghost costume, if you want to call it that, the bed sheet with the glasses. My God, freaky stuff. But into the second one, we got these kills happening all throughout the hospital, with like this boiling water, kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it, I guess a hot tub sort of thing. I guess it would be for like hydrotherapy. A woman is murdered in that. There's a crazy scene in the beginning of the film with lots of that POV walking around. You're looking through the eyes of Michael Myers, and he walks into this woman's house, and it's very creepy stuff. So I would definitely recommend the first two Halloween films, and then we're gonna jump forward like fucking 30 years or 40 years almost to Rob Zombie coming along and creating his own version of Halloween, which is just, the violence is turned up, the gore is turned up, and it's, oh my God. I remember seeing this movie when it first came out and being like, what in the fuck? And then when the DVD came out and we caught the director's cut, we were like, Jesus Christ, this is not like meant for people. Like, this is brutal stuff, man. And that sort of like, you know, I'd seen brutal stuff before that, but now it was like a familiar character. You know, we had never seen Michael Myers this brutal before. Some of my favorite kills, of course, are the bully, this cocksucker that messes with Michael Myers when he's a kid, and Michael Myers just goes to town on him with a fucking like piece of wood. It's a brutal scene. Lots of good character actors in this film as well. Ken Foree is in this film. He actually might be in the second one, I could be mistaken on that, but of course Sherry Moon Zombie's in it. God damn it, the dude that was the crazy sheriff at the end of Devil's Rejects, William Forsythe, is in this film. Yeah, there's so many good character actors and Rob Zombie regulars, if you want to call them that, throughout the film. And there's a very devastating scene with Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo plays a psychiatric, orderly at this mental hospital, and he sort of befriends Michael at a young age, and then throughout the years, he thinks they have a bit of a rapport, but that rapport is just shattered. And that Michael Myers killing Danny Trejo in that Halloween film is a testament to show how fucking deranged Michael Myers is. He's not just like, you might think, part of me when I first seen that movie, I'm like, oh, he's gonna let him go. He's gonna let him go. No. Fucking head crush with a TV. This is heavy duty stuff. So moving on to another fan favorite, we got Friday the 13th, which is a franchise that is headed by an amazing character named Jason Voorhees. He's known, man. This guy is much like Freddy, much like Michael. When you think about horror films, you're thinking about Jason. He puts that fucking hockey mask on, like in part 3, and it's history from there, man. A modern day horror icon. So when it comes to this franchise, I more or less revolve around the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth movie. And the reason why I do that is because I'm a fan of the Tommy Jarvis storyline, and I just love that character because it starts off in part 4. He's Corey Feldman. He's this young kid. He's a horror nerd, and he's just looking out to impress like this guy that they pick up hitchhiking. Essentially, he's like this camper guy, and he's like fucking hell-bent on getting this adult up into his room to show him all of his horror stuff. And it's fucked up by today's standards, but when you watch the film, it works. Throughout the movie, you have this group of kids who's not being led, but part of the group is Crispin Glover and this other guy, and they're just two dudes trying to get laid. They didn't bring chicks to this fucking cottage, but they're with a couple of other buddies. And once they get up there, they discover that it's like cottage country, and there's these two twins, like these two blonde twins. So our two guys, like, they think they're gonna get some from these chicks, and there's a bunch of banter between those guys. And I just really like this installment. Like later on, when Crispin Glover ends up getting some ass and the other guy doesn't, and the other guy's like, I guess you could say, like, more attractive, and he would be the guy you'd expect to get some cunt. But I shouldn't have said get some cunt, but you know what I mean. Get lucky, you know what I mean. But the other guy, the good-looking guy, doesn't get lucky, and he basically is left to watching these old burlesque 16mm film prints of, like I said, like these burlesque chicks going nuts, and he's just like laughing. He gets killed in a very cool way. A lot of good kills in this video, or in this movie. Jason gets killed in a very memorable way. Tommy Jarvis, he kind of fucking goes full Britney Spears there for a minute, but it works. And then with part 4 being over, it moves into part 5 with Tommy now being a little bit older and being sent to like a fucking halfway house for kids, essentially. Right off the bat, as soon as he gets there, shit is hitting the fan. There's this really chubby, nerdy guy who's going around. He's kind of, half there in a way, and he's offering people chocolate bars, and he's greasying up all the laundry, and he's pissing everyone off. And this one guy, you can tell he's just on edge, doesn't want to be at this place, and he just goes to town on him with an axe. And, paramedics show up, and the paramedics have, like, the funniest fucking lines. Like, the one paramedic, I just love this guy. And from there, it's another game of cat and mouse where Jason is just picking these kids off one at a time. It's cool to mention that the guy that ends up killing the chubby dude with an axe is actually from another film that we'll be talking about later, and that's Return of the Living Dead. And to get even deeper with that, I believe his name is Miguel Nunez is in this film as well, who was also in Return of the Living Dead. I love this movie. This is my favorite Friday the 13th film. Could be blasphemy to some, but to me, it has everything that I want in this kind of movie. So with that being said, I guess I should mention out a few of my favorite kills. Definitely the end with the reveal. We'll call it the reveal. Miguel Nunez's kill is one of my favorite kills ever, and it takes place inside of a porta potty or a shit box. I just love that fucking shit. Moving on to part 6, all right, capping off the Friday the 13th franchise, for me at least, we have an even older Tommy Jarvis now who's like just been released. He's just trying to find his way. He wants to make sure that Jason's killed though, so he goes and visits the grave, and when he's there, shit hits the fucking fan, okay? And I think this is kind of where it gets to, like, it sets up with the next one, because I believe this movie, he's regenerated by, like, he's getting stabbed, and then, like, the thunder hits the fucking, the lightning rather hits the rod that he's using to stab Jason's corpse, and it like the lightning strikes it and it brings him back to life in a Frankenstein-esque manner. I really do love that shit, man. This movie is fucking awesome because it reminds me of The Hitcher. It just reminds me of The Hitcher, which is another movie that I fucking love. Shout out to Rutger Hauer, rest in peace. It has a bunch of cool elements for it. You got like the cops that aren't believing him. It literally is like The Hitcher, and there's some great kills in there. There's like this sleazy guy that's like doing coke out front of a diner. He gets killed in a cool way. Like lots of good stuff. So actually, I don't think it shows that guy getting killed. It shows his girl getting killed, I believe, but that's besides the point. These are the three that I go for. So moving along into our next franchise, just checking our time here. We're going to check out Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we're only going to be looking at part 1 for now, and then I'll get into what I talk about after that. You'll catch the drift. So with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we have directed by Tobe Hooper, 1974, might I add. It's a classic. It's a staple. It's one of those movies, like I said about Halloween. It's not very gory, but it's just like the subject matter and like the texture of the film, everything about it just makes you like go, oh, this is like fucking dirty. Like it feels like a real exploitation, or not exploitation, like a real snuff film. Like some guy like filmed this from the bushes. It's crazy, man. There's a lot of memorable scenes, a lot of good kills. Of course, the kill of the movie for me is when the most annoying fucking people or annoying person of the group of kids. Oh, before I get too far ahead of myself, the movie's essentially about this group of kids going to find their grandparents' house. You know what I mean? And they get lost and they pick up a hitchhiker. They don't really get lost. They pick up a hitchhiker and then shit just goes downhill from there, okay? But like I said, there are some good kills, like when our big fucking guy gets killed in the dark. What the hell's his name? I just remember him going, Sally, Sally, Sally. Like everyone knows this fucking guy. It's such a satisfying kill. The other really crazy kill, or I guess I could say shot, because it's not technically a kill. I don't think it killed him, but our first guy, like our first hero, goes into the house and he opens up this door. He walks a little down the hall, and next thing you know, Leatherface is just fucking there, boom, and smashes him in the head with a hammer. And you're like, what the fuck? My first exposure to this movie was an old taped copy on VHS. It was fucking grainy, it was dark, and it literally paralyzed me with fear. That's how fucking creepy this shit was. So we're going to skip forward because I'm not a fan of part 2, not a fan of part 3 or 4, not a fan of that Leatherface movie, but what I am a fan of is the 2003 remake with, I believe, Jessica Biel, and even more than that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, okay? And I've talked about these movies within the last year on the channel, but just to reiterate my point, like, the first one is kind of about, well, it's basically the exact same movie, just updated, much like the Halloween Rob Zombie films. The violence is just like fucking thrown into like overgear, man, and you get some crazy scenes, some crazy shots. One of the most memorable shots of this film, most technical shots of this film, I might add, is when this woman is in the backseat of a van and shoots herself in the head through the mouth. The camera starts from outside of her mouth, retracts through her mouth, through the hole in the back of her fucking head, and out, and it shows the whole van. Insanity. How the fuck did they do that is what I want to know. That is a shot. When I watch a movie and I'm going like, how the fuck did they do that? That's when you know they've done a good job. So that movie is just crazy. The boyfriend that gets like strapped to the chair or like to the table is probably my favorite kill of the movie. And it's very emotional because throughout the movie I just totally mixed up the two movies. But with that being said, I love that remake. So moving on to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning real quick. This movie is about these two brothers who are both, one of them's been drafted to the Vietnam War, the other one's already served a tour, and he's re-enlisting to go make sure his little brother's safe. And the little brother tries to burn his draft card, and at the same time he's doing this, these bikers fucking basically mess up their car, and the car flips and all that. It all goes to hell. And then the Sheriff Hoyt, who I forgot to mention from the first one, is played by Arlie Emery, and my God, this guy is he's a talent that will forever be missed, okay? His performance in Full Metal Jacket is one of the performances of the Stanley Kubrick filmography, you know what I mean? It's just potent shit. So you find out where or and how Sheriff Hoyt became Sheriff Hoyt. And I don't want to really give it away because like I've talked about this movie recently and it's good. It's one of my favorite of the remakes. It is my favorite remake above Halloween, Rob Zombie, above, anything. That is my shit. So we'll leave it at that. Moving on to Hellraiser. Okay, I'm only going to be talking about the first one here because it's the only one that I'm really well versed in. Basically, the movie is all about this guy who's out to find like a better orgasm essentially, and he's dabbled with women, he's dabbled with occult shit, and finally he gets his hands on this box, this little puzzle box, and this puzzle box holds like properties that are otherworldly and basically open up the gates of hell, and it's madness. So once this guy does that, he's sort of like shipped into this other reality, but he escapes from hell. And at the same time he's escaping from hell, his brother is coming to take over the house because it was like their mother's house essentially. So all this like voodoo witchcraft crazy shit has been done up in the attic, and this family moves in, you know what I mean? And the wife of the guy that's just moved in previously dicked around with the cultist guy, and that cultist guy comes a-calling, all right, in the form of like a body with no skin, and basically what he does is he makes that woman go and get guys, like acting like she's gonna fuck them, and then bring them back to the house, and then he kills them and consumes their fucking, their essence, I guess you could call it that. But you come for that shit, but you stay for Pinhead, who is the monsters in these movies are called Cenobites, and they're, especially in the first two, like, my God, they are so fucking freaky looking and amazing. Doug Bradley as Pinhead, amazing stuff. So, and part two is really fucking good as well. I haven't seen it enough. There's also a really good documentary on part two on Shudder. I don't know if it's still on there, but I would recommend watching part 2 and 3 as well, and even part 4. I really like part 4 with Bloodline, because I'd seen that one first. So I knew the history of that box when I seen the first movie, and I was like, damn, it made it better in a way, I would say. So Hellraiser, that's good shit. Next, we're going to move on to Child's Play. Yes, Child's Play is one of those go-tos for me. So ever since I was a little kid, me and my cousin, we were just horror addicts. Like, he's the guy, my cousin C-Mac, he's the guy that I watched a lot of these movies with. I shouldn't say all, because it wasn't all. But a lot of these movies I watched with him. And Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, I cannot even fucking tell you how many times we've watched those movies. So those will be the ones that I talk about, because there are later installments in the franchise, and some of them I do not mind, but the first 3 are the ones you need to watch. Okay, so the first movie it starts out with this chase, all right, between a cop and a crook, ends up in a fucking toy department store, and the cop kills the crook. But before the cop kills the crook performs voodoo magic and casts his soul into the doll of this, or into into this doll, and now he's this doll. But he can make himself look like he's a fucking, like, just stand there, hi, I'm Chucky. Like, he can act like a toy, but in reality he has full movement of his body. He even fucking bleeds, for fuck's sake. So there's a scene in the movie where, before the doll is alive and you're kind of just wondering what the hell's going on, a woman is thrown from the apartment, and it's amazing. It's an amazing slow motion fall from a very high apartment. I believe it was the Bradbury building that they used, to be honest with you, which is a building they've used in a lot of cinema over the years, a lot of TV and stuff like that. But great stuff. There's a scene where Chucky the doll goes and talks to the guy that taught him the voodoo, and that is the best scene in the entire franchise. I don't care what anyone says, that is the shit right there. Incredible acting all around. Chris Sarandon from Fright Night, who we'll be talking about him later on. Child's Play 1, amazing stuff. Child's Play 2 features the boy who was the owner of Chucky. Now he's a little bit older. He's separated from his mom. He's living in foster care, and he gets adopted into this foster family, and Chucky follows him there, essentially. There's a really creative way of how they bring Chucky back into the picture, which I really like. The movie starts off with, like, the doll being essentially refurbished, I guess, for a lack of a better term, and it's kind of convenient though, because where they pick up Andy from this orphanage is like kind of next door to where this good guy depart, like where they build the dolls are. It's a little convenient for me, but I really love this movie. It's got some good kills. Garrett Graham, who plays kind of the prickish male figure of the foster parents, he's got some really memorable lines we've been saying for years, like open it. Open it. Like, I got an autograph from my cousin from Garrett Graham, and I got him to write open it on it. And I told him, I said, man, you have no idea how many times we fucking said this. We love you, man. I love you. Thank you. You're part of my childhood. He fucking got a kick out of that. Garrett Graham, solid dude. I believe he's passed on, but rest in peace if that's the case. So when Garrett Graham gets killed in Child's Play, it's pretty crazy because basically he's walking down the stairs of the basement to prove that Chucky's not really alive to Andy. And as he does so, Chucky hooks his foot with like an umbrella because it has like that hook deal. And he falls and, you know, basically breaks his neck. But not before Chucky says like, hey, fuckface, I'm real, without actually saying those words. Great film. There's a really scary scene that I always think about no matter what. If I'm near a photocopier, I think of the scene with that woman getting like stabbed or she gets like choked out or something, and then she falls on the photocopier and the photocopy machine just keeps going off with like her face, and it's creepy stuff, man. So this movie ends at the Jesus Christ. This movie ends at the toy factory that it started at, and I like that. And it's this whole chase. It's cool, man. I've always loved that scene because it shows the dolls being made, and it's a creative way of how they kill Chucky. So with that being said, we're going to move on to part 3, which is probably my second favorite. I think for me it goes part 1, then part 3, then part 2. So part 3 is Andy. Now he's like 16 years old, and he's a little shit disturber, but he gets sent to military school, and he just meets a comedy or a fucking huge cast of assholes. And there's this one guy named Whitehurst who's like he's like his nerdy roommate, and he's cool. But everyone else is a dick. There's a girl named De Silva who Andy likes kind of thing. And that's decent part of the film. But when Chucky comes into the picture and how he's brought back, like I think like the second one was an amazing bring back, but the third one, it's like an old. Obviously, Chucky dies in the toy factory at the end of part 2. So at the beginning of part 3, it's an old cobwebby toy fucking factory, and they pick up like the gross body part of Chucky, and they melt the latex down, and they reuse the latex. So all of his blood and stuff is in the mold, and he comes back for a third time, and now he's after Andy in full force. But he learns in this movie that he doesn't need to transfer his soul into the body of the first person that he told himself to. Well, he does, but it doesn't matter. If it's a new body, it can change. You know what I mean? So in the third one, he's interested in Andy at the beginning, but when he finds that out, boom, he sees this other kid, younger kid, a little black kid, and Chucky makes the quote. I love this line. He goes, "Hey, Chucky's gonna be a bro." And you can look at that whatever way you want at this like nowadays, but it's funny. Whatever, it's fucking funny. And I love the atmosphere of them being at this military school and all of this, like, you know, these people that are like very serious dudes. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's people in the first 2 movies that kind of are like, you know, Andy, is everything okay? With this one, they're like, Andy, we don't take any bullshit here. We got a super asshole lieutenant, or what the hell was he? Lieutenant Colonel Sheldon, you asshole. Like just a prick guy who's totally busting Andy's balls. And he gets killed in a very brutal way. And I have to give this away because every year at this military school, they have like these war games where all the ammunition they use are paint, like, you know, paint bullets basically. So they don't kill you. They might hurt, but they don't kill you. What Chucky does, okay, is he loads all of the magazines with live rounds. And now the war games are like really fucking war games. And it ends at a goddamn carnival, which is cool. And Chucky, once again, gets killed in a really fucking cool way at the carnival, which is great. So Child's Play is definitely a franchise that I always go for. At least 1 or 2 of them a year, especially during Halloween. So, all right, so Leprechaun. I'm only going to be talking about the first installment in the franchise, but I couldn't leave Leprechaun out because it is a movie that I watched a lot as a kid. So basically, the story of Leprechaun goes like this. There's this woman and her dad, and they're going to live at this farmhouse. And she's like a big city kind of girl, you know what I mean? So she's mad there's no reception. She's mad there's no pool, that kind of shit. And right off the bat, weird stuff starts happening. She thinks like her leg's getting rubbed at one point, but it's really the leprechaun. Like she even makes a quote like, I know what it feels like when a man rubs my leg, and the dad's like, you do? Like that, it's funny to me. But the scene in this movie that I find the most creepy is when Jennifer Aniston goes to this nursing home where the previous owner of the farmhouse lives. So she's trying to get an explanation of like, how the fuck do you kill this leprechaun? And when she gets there, it's just like this very weird color and messed up atmosphere that freaked me the fuck out when I was a kid. And there's its funny moments in there, like Leprechaun riding the goddamn rollerblades and he crashes through a fence, and it's like a cartoon. So like when he goes through the fence, like it makes a complete outline of him, like that kind of shit. But it's good. It leans more towards the horror than it does the comedy, but the comedy is there. So and you get a really good appearance of Ozzy, who is Francis from fucking Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, which he's like the biggest douchebag in that movie, and in this movie he's like this timid kind of guy, and it's cool to see actors in other movies. It's just a fascination I have. Another franchise we're only going to be looking at the first part of, Saw. Okay, Saw came out when I was a kid. I think it came out about 2003, so I was about 11 years old, and it was some heavy duty stuff. And the thing that I always found fascinating, and to this day I respect and admire, is the fact that it was two film students that came up with this idea, made a short film, pitched it, got funding, and made this movie that ended up having like 9 sequels. You know, and James Wan, I think it was James Wan and Lee Winnell who teamed up on that. And I just have big kudos to that, because I think it's a really admirable come up. And, you know, it's cool because the first Saw would be so fucking cheap to make. And, you know, being like an independent horror filmmaker myself, I respect shit like that. So basically, if you don't know the premise of Saw, these two men wake up in this room with their feet chained to the walls, and there's a dead guy in the middle of the room, and they don't know what the fuck's going on. So there's this tape recorder with these messages and stuff, and they're like, what the hell's going on? And eventually this saw comes out of nowhere, and it's up to one of the men to cut off their foot, and it's very, very crazy stuff. And the thing is, with this movie, they actually make fun of it in one of the Scary Movie films with Dr. Phil and Shaquille O'Neal, which is like the weirdest fucking team up ever, but it's funny shit, man. So Saw, I guess my favorite kill of the movie doesn't even really happen in the first movie, I guess. I think my favorite kill is the reveal, you know? I guess we're going to have to flip the switch, man. It's not a kill, it's a reveal, and the reveal is rich. So we'll leave it at that. Moving on, we got Return of the Living Dead, okay? And once again, I'm only going to be reaching on the first installment of this franchise because it is the one that I know the best. I've seen part 2 and 3 before, and I really do like part 2, and I really do like part 3, to be honest with you, but part fucking 1, I think, is like the perfect horror comedy film of the ages. So basically, the movie goes as followed. There's this, like, I guess, medical supply place where this, you know, stoner dude, part of this cool stoner hippie group, not hippie group, but, you know, like these outcasts, one of them's working at this place, and there's like this really colorful fucking dude that works there with him, and he's like telling him all these things, like, you know, there's the fucking dead bodies in the basement from the Night of the Living Dead movie and all this, like, that shit was real. And they go down to the basement, and there's a hilarious scene where, you know, these bodies are really in the basement in these like oil drums, and the younger guy says, like, oh, can these things leak? Will these things crack or anything? And the older guy says, no, son, these are made by the goddamn U.S. Army. And he kicks one of them, and then all of a sudden, all this steam and shit comes spouting out at him. It's awesome, man. And then that kickstarts the movie, because now these guys are infected with the zombie juice, essentially. And the guy in the barrel ends up being known as the Tar Man, which is a very cool practical effect of the 80s. Like, one of the ones that stand out for sure. He's very skeleton-esque in that film. So I would say my favorite kill in the movie is when the girl, played by Linnea Quigley, she's like dancing naked in the cemetery, and she says that one of her worst fears, or, you know, one of the like shittiest ways she could think of dying is having all these like old men like fucking bite her, essentially, and that's what happens. And it's greasy, and you're like, oh, yeah, you should have fucking asked for that one, broad. But crazy stuff. These are all really, it's fun to make this video because these are all movies that I really love, you know. I recommend anyone make a video like this. We're going to move on to Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2, not 3, because 3 was fucking dog shit. Jeepers Creepers is essentially a road horror film, the first one. It's about a brother and sister going home to visit the parents on spring break, and they're playing all these sort of like fun sibling games on the road, like making words out of the license plates and different shit like that. And along the way, this truck comes along and almost fucking takes them off the road, and they're like, what the hell? So up the road a little bit, they see that guy pulled over at this old church, and he's dumping stuff down this pipe, okay? And that's all I'm saying, because honestly, if you haven't seen Jeepers Creepers 1 at least, I find that very hard to believe. But if you haven't, it's so goddamn good. It's perfect example of good horror of the 2000s. And moving on to its sequel, Jeepers Creepers Part 2, picks up like right after where that one left off, and it's basically another road horror film, but this time it's a bus of basketball players, and the bus breaks down, and like they're out in the middle of nowhere, and the creeper is just tormenting them, like flying around, messing with them. Lots of memorable lines. Bucky is in this film, and one of his lines is, he's talking on a CB radio, and the guy's like, are you close to anything? Can you see any signs? Are you close to anything? And Bucky goes, I'm pretty close to peeing my fucking pants, man. And me and my brother, we say that shit all the time. I love Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. What the fuck happened with Part 3? Like, my God, what a shit fucking fest that was. Moving on, we still got quite a few movies on the franchise list. We got... Blah, 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 blah. I can't even read my own word. I did this like such shitty writing. Reanimator, okay? The first Reanimator, because there is, I believe, 3, maybe 4 in the franchise, but that first one, that's a movie that I didn't discover until, I was an adult. I'd heard about it. I'd seen the poster in books and stuff like that, but I'd never sat down and watched Reanimator, and when I did, I was so fucking impressed with it. I thought this was like so cool. It made me love Jeffrey Combs. I started watching all of his movies, like fucking From Beyond, like the other Stuart Gordon film that they worked on together. A couple other films. I've seen some movies with him from the 2000s, to be honest with you. Great actor. Basically, the movie Reanimator is all about this medical student named Herbert West, played by Jeffrey Combs, who's like a know-it-all, and he's developed this serum that will bring the dead back to life. And he gets kicked out of his school in Germany and sent back to America, where he's looking for an apartment. And then, the movie's more or less now shifting into the view of this, regular guy who's dating the dean's daughter, and he's got a room for rent. Herbert West rents it out, and it almost like a buddy thing ensues in a way. Like, I wouldn't say like a Dumb and Dumber thing, but more like, these guys, they're kind of buddy-ish near the end, if you know what I mean. It's a good fucking movie with great effects, great acting, and just great horror all throughout. Like, this is not a sleeper movie. And I would recommend checking out the other 2 to 3 films in the franchise. I'm pretty sure it's 3. Pretty sure it goes Beyond Reanimator, Bride of Reanimator, but at the very least, watch Part 1. It's starting to rain outside. Hopefully the microphone picks that up for a little bit of fucking ambiance. The Exorcist. Okay, another movie, once again, these are pretty much all movies where I'll be focusing on the first installment. The Exorcist. So, The Exorcist is a movie that's all about this girl whose mother is an actress, and she kind of delves around with a Ouija board and all that, and she becomes possessed and needs to have an exorcist performed on her. And basically, we have this priest who's like beginning to question his faith, and it's through the exorcism that he regains his faith. But at the same time, at the beginning of the film, you start off in like Iraq, and there's this expedition going on where they're digging up ruins and stuff like that, and they find this little tiny statue of Pazuzu, who's this demon. And right after the discovery of that, it basically jumps forward over to the United States, where you meet the mother-daughter combination, and then it goes from there. But they enlist the help of the guy who's losing his faith, and the guy, Father, I forget his name, but it's Father Karras is the one guy, and then the other priest from Iraq comes over, and they perform The Exorcist, and it's fucking scary shit. This is 70s horror at its finest. There's a reason why Exorcist is so respected and talked about, because it's just crazy shit. It's directed by William Friedkin, who also directed The French Connection, which is a fucking masterpiece. I love the first Exorcist. My favorite scene in the movie is when like the fucking priest is like having those dreams, and he sees his mom walking up those stairs, like a subway stair, and he's like trying to scream to her, but she can't hear him, and it's fucked up stuff, man. Freaky stuff. The Omen. Yes, man. The Omen is a movie that my brother famously wouldn't fucking watch for a long time. He said it was just too fucking scary, and I love it. Basically, The Omen is all about the coming of the Satan himself. So this family, they have this kid, and he's got the mark of the beast, and it's all about these different, the father, coming to grips with it. His father's put in a very fucked up position at the end of this movie. I believe the kid's actually adopted, but it's very crazy. There's a scene that involves a train at the end. I'm so rusty with The Omen, but it's such a good classic movie. A guy gets impaled, and man, it's heavy duty. Once again, heavy duty 70s cinema. You really can't go wrong unless you're reaching for you know if a movie's going to be good or bad within the first 10 minutes. And in terms of how it's shot and all that, because if some nights you want to watch a schlocky sleazer, but other times you want to watch The Exorcist, a very high production value, very professional and pristine looking film, so it all depends on how you're feeling at that time in terms of what you want to watch, I guess. So The Omen, definitely a good one. Devil's Rejects. So this is a franchise we will talk about all three. I've covered all three of these films recently in the Rob Zombie Director Spotlight video, but just to brush over them real quick. The first movie, you kind of get a bit of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing happening with this group of kids going around, only this time they're not going to a concert. This time they're just trying to write this book on offbeat fucking roadside attractions. And they're met by this crazy guy named Captain Spaulding, who's actually not crazy. He's just a guy that's about his business. And he sends them on, against his will, really. He writes a map for these kids to go see this tree of the dead, essentially. And along the way to see this tree, they pick up a hitchhiker who's Sherry Moon Zombie. She takes him to the house, and all hell breaks loose. Literally, there's some bad stuff in this movie. Not bad stuff in bad quality, but I mean horrific stuff is happening all throughout this flick. Man, it's when I was a kid, the cover of this movie freaked me the fuck out, as did Evil Dead 2. But basically, it's House of a Thousand Corpses is all about the kids being murdered in various ways by the family of Sherry Moon Zombie. You got Otis, played by Bill Moseley, who's very fucking memorable in his part. Reprises his role twice after that in amazing performances. But, the first one, House of a Thousand Corpses, is very experimental in terms of how it's structured. The second one, Devil's Rejects, follows the events of the first one where, Otis, Captain Spaulding, and Sherry Moon Zombie, Baby, they're on the run from the police. So they're hiding out in different places. And, at one point they end up at Ken Foree's fucking whorehouse. And they have this crazy party and all that, but Ken Foree is working against them in a way. It's weird though, because you get a sense that Ken Foree and Captain Spaulding are really tight, and you wouldn't think that Ken Foree would give him up, but he does, and it's sad, because I really wish that there could have been a good camaraderie thing there. He could have stayed on our side essentially, but no. And then they get shipped back, now that they're captured by these assholes that were after they were set up by Ken Foree and taken by these assholes. They're taken to the house that they lived at, and they're tortured by a police officer who previously his brother was killed by the family. So he's got this fucking total religious vendetta to put out on these on this family. Crazy shit, man. And then Three from Hell, which takes place, I believe, 10 years after the Devil's Rejects, and it's basically about them escaping prison and then just doing one last little rowdy dow, you know what I mean? A little fucking how do you do, I guess. So they go on the road and they end up in Mexico, and they have, I gotta admit, the end of Three from Hell is kind of lackluster for me, but I really did enjoy the movie, to be quite honest. I've watched it about 4 or 5 times, man. I've watched Three from Hell more times than I've watched Devil's Rejects, and I love Devil's Rejects, so that goes to show you something. All right, so moving on to the oldest franchise on our our list of goodness here, we got Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, who is one of the most monumental, recognizable, most well-respected filmmakers in the game of all time. He created movies like Vertigo, The Birds, Rope, Rear Window, fucking Lifeboat, which I love. He knows how to make good movies. So Psycho is all about this woman who's working as like a real estate licensor type of chick, and or she's a secretary at a real estate office, and she steals $30,000 cash, and she flees. So she ends up at this motel at the Bates Motel, owned by Norman and his mother, and the mother kills the woman that stole the $30,000 and disposes of her body and her car and the money without knowing that. And the movie's basically about the woman's sister and the boyfriend of the woman looking for her. And they hired this fucking private detective, I should say. And he gets killed in a very hilarious way, but very spooky way and very technically pleasing way in terms of how it's shot later on in the film. And there's a crazy reveal. And I have to spoil this movie because I want to talk about part 2. And basically, I'm like doing a total disservice against Alfred Hitchcock in case you haven't seen this movie. Norman Bates' mother is dead, and Norman Bates dresses up as his mother and does these killings, and sort of forgets that it's him doing it. It's almost like a split personality thing, and it's very crazy. So moving into part 2, we got Norman Bates leaving the mental hospital and coming back to, own his motel. And there's this sleazy guy that's running it right now, and it's like basically a house of ill repute. People getting high, people banging, all that kind of stuff. Norman is not about that, so he fires the manager, starts off fresh, starts painting all that stuff, and there's this woman that comes walking into his life, and he thinks it's by accident, but it's not by accident. This woman that walks into Norman's life is actually the daughter of the sister from the first movie, and they're out to fuck over Norman, and that's what the movie's about. That's a spoiler, but you should have seen that movie by now, hopefully. But great stuff. This is more of a 80s slasher film. Psycho in the 60s, good slasher film. This one, it's like a Freddy Krueger, or not, I shouldn't say Freddy Krueger. It's like a Friday the 13th caliber of slasher film, but with Norman Bates as in the film and not doing all the killings himself. He does do an insane killing at the end, and I'll leave it at that. Psycho is a franchise that you need to watch. All of them are worth watching, including Bates Motel, which was the TV show. Fuck, that was good. Moving on to our third final franchise film, that is Candyman. So once again, first installment only we'll be talking about. Candyman is a movie about this woman and her friend who are trying to write this thesis paper about urban legends, and they want to talk about Candyman. So they go hunting out Candyman at this project in Chicago, and they get way more than they ask for in terms of horrific incidences coming out of fucking nowhere, dead animals, and crazy shit happening in bathrooms. This is a movie not for the faint of heart. If you're gonna watch Candyman with your child, make sure you're watching the TV edit, okay? Because if your child sees that fucking dead kid laying in that bathroom, they will be scarred for life, because I'm speaking from personal fucking experience here. Okay, that's haunting stuff. Even now when you watch it, it's a quick shot. You see the body shaking, his wiener's cut off, like it's bad. It's crazy stuff. My favorite kill in that movie is, it's not actually shown, but when it shows that dog's head cut off in the bathroom and there's blood everywhere, that's a scene. That's a scene. Moving on to probably the newest franchise on the list, 28 Days Later. And I don't even need to say it at this point. We're only going to talk about the first one. It's a movie that much follows the same formula as The Walking Dead, and it's up for debate which one. I think they both came out in 2003, the comic and the movie, but they just followed the same deal where like a guy wakes up out of his bed in a hospital and the place is deserted. Everywhere's deserted, and then there's zombies everywhere. It's great. It's probably one of the best interpretations of it. This, along with Dawn of the Dead, the remake, I think have the best modern day zombies in any of the films that have come out like in the last 20 years. So, 28 Days Later, it features Cillian Murphy, who's one of my favorite actors ever. I love that guy. He was especially fantastic in the movie called Heart of the Sea. which is like a Moby Dick movie, but he's great in that. Yeah, moving on. Okay, so now we're finally at the last franchise of the franchise portion of this show. We're going to be talking about Evil Dead, okay? All fucking 3 of them, because we gotta. Evil Dead, the first one, is all about this group of friends going out into the woods to find this cottage, stay at this cottage, have a good old time. Little do they know, there's a bunch of witchcraft shit happening in the basement. And, you know, there's a book, there's a tape recorder. They start fucking around with the tape recorder, start fucking around with the book, and Ash basically unlocks all these demons coming out. And it's one of those movies from the 80s. It's an independent like movie, so it's very homemade in a way, if you know, without looking homemade, but the effects are very stop motion-y. They're well done, but they're very like low budget in terms of what else was coming out at the time. Still fantastic, but basically the demons infect all of the people besides Ash, played by Bruce Campbell, and he's the last one standing. And then Evil Dead 2, it kind of is like a bit of a remake in a way. Like the first, I would say, 10 minutes totally redact the first movie. So you got Ash showing up at this cottage with a girl by themselves, and the girl quickly gets turned into a zombie, and now it's Ash like totally. You can tell this movie is like, you could tell Sam Raimi was like sitting around, he's like, man, I'd love to like do that again, but like better and like more fucking like better effects and all that. And then someone was just like, here's some money, you should do that. And then that's what you get. Evil Dead 2 is like a horror comedy, more horror than comedy. When I was a kid, it was not comedy at all. It was fucked. That scene with the laughing deer, I laughed at it with my dad and my uncle and stuff, but in reality, I was like, Jesus Christ, that's creepy shit. And I still think it's pretty fucked up now. I laugh at it now, but my God, crazy stuff. And basically Ash alone at this cottage going crazy. He's met by the family of the people that own the cottage, and or the descendants of the family, I should say. And they're with like a couple of hick people. I actually met Danny Hicks, who was one of the guys there. He's actually passed away since. He's a great guy, but they all get picked off in cool ways, and it's a good, warm, cozy movie for me because I watched it so much when I was a kid that it's a go-to. We're moving on to standalone horror movies, so that is it for the franchise portion of the show. We're going to be moving on to standalone horror movies next, so stay tuned because we will return after these brief messages.